When it comes to movies, Hollywood is out, YouTube is in. Hi, what's up, everybody? So, today I wanted to talk about something that kind of wraps up everything I talked about last week. So, I did some videos and watched Obsession, Iron Lung, Backrooms, all three movies made by YouTubers. And it's not like they were the only ones. I mean, I think the first YouTuber to actually make a full feature-length film was Chris Stuckman with Shelby Oaks. I never really saw Shelby Oaks. It's one of those movies that kind of just got lost in the shuffle. But I do remember watching the trailer and being very impressed with some of the technical elements of the movie. The way the camera moves, some of the shot compositions, and what he looked like he was doing in the horror genre and kind of putting in his own ingredients together of known tropes of different kinds of horror movies. And of course, I just props to you, bro. You're reviewing movies. Now you're actually putting some skin in the game and making your own movie. I know he's gotten a lot of flack online in recent times because after, I think it was Madam Web, he refused to make a negative review video. But it's like, in my mind, do you, bro? You know what I mean? I will say, go back. I didn't really check this yet before making this video, but he used to have this video series called Hilariosity, where he would review movies that are just laughably and objectively terrible, and he looked like he was having an amazing time. I had fun seeing how much fun he was having talking about how ridiculous these movies are. And I'm talking movies like Dragon Ball Z, I think The Room, and just a bunch of others. If it's still there, I highly recommend you look it up and you watch them. They're a really, really fun time. And so I'm kind of sad that he's not doing those kind of videos anymore. However, having said that, what I started feeling as I'm watching each one of these movies, specifically with Iron Lung, that's when I really started to formulate this thought. And it was just crystallized with Backroom, is that the old way of making movies is completely dead in my eyes. I'm not saying Hollywood is going to completely go away, but the system that basically Hollywood was built off of is absolutely done. And that was the last. Backrooms, to me, was the last nail in the coffin. And what do I mean by that? Back in the day, the system was very, very centralized and specific. You go to film school, you intern at some movie studio, you work on a film crew, and then maybe little by little you start working your way up the ladder, like a la Steven Spielberg, where he was directing television stuff. And then eventually, if you're lucky enough and good enough, you get to be, the head of your own movie. That's completely gone now. You know what I mean? You don't have to go that route. I mean, that started to, I think the first signs of it, of this crack came in the early 90s with all of those independent filmmakers, whether it's Richard Linklater, Kevin Smith, even Quentin Tarantino. But the difference is Hollywood still found a way to kind of hold on to that system for a little bit longer. But now with the rise of technology and YouTube's, especially with these particular platforms, the party's over. That domination from the 1920s, 30s, whenever it was truly crystallized, is over. Because now, what is the deal? Phones are getting so good. Even if you don't want to use a phone as a camera, a really, really, really high definition, good camera, maybe couple $1,000. We're not talking about $50,000, $100,000 Red One cameras that David Fincher likes to use. You can make a very, very competent looking movie at a fraction of the cost. Now, what about film schools? Those are also done. Because now, if you are sufficiently motivated and disciplined, all you have to do, instead of going to a university film school, you go to YouTube University, and you will find any kind of video that talks about editing, that talks about storytelling, that talks about camera angles, that talks about blocking, setting, all that jazz. You can learn it from YouTube and then just use whatever knowledge that you've acquired over the time, a la Tarantino. I mean, he just watched so much television and so many movies that his own brain was able to, put together the pieces of the puzzle of what makes good character development, what makes good story progression, and the kinds of things you do to allow a story to unfold. You can learn all of that via YouTube, maybe even buy a couple books here and there, to kind of continue your own education. But you don't have to go into debt now to pay for film school. You know what I mean? You don't have to intern at a movie studio anymore. You just make your own stuff and then you post it to whatever platform. I'm talking about YouTube particularly now, and then let the analytics tell you whether or not it's any good, whether or not it's received well by the audience. And so Markiplier, the guy who made Iron Lung, is the perfect example of that in my eyes, because you look at his YouTube channel, it's almost 6,000 videos. That's a lot of practice into making short videos and then longer and longer and longer things. And then the next thing you know, you go from making, a 5-minute video to a 15-minute video to a half an hour video. Next thing you know, you got, a feature film, which is exactly what he did. And on top of that, along the way that you're putting that practice together and getting better and better and better at the skill of making things and content that people enjoy, telling stories in a way that are engaging, Markiplier did, 38 million subscribers. Now, Iron Lung, he released on YouTube. I don't know how much he charged for it. I didn't look it up. But imagine he just charged $1. And then all of his subscribers paid that $1 to watch Iron Lung. It's $38 million on probably an infinitesimal fraction of a budget. Hollywood wishes they can make that kind of profit margin these days on the regular basis. It does, every now and again. You got the Michael movie that I think just surpassed $1 billion, and so many other movies here and there that do giant numbers, but those are a handful a year. You go back to the early 2000s and the 90s and the 80s, and they were making bangers and making huge profit margins. Then, whatever happened, that's a whole nother video series probably I could make about, doing the autopsy on why Hollywood is dead now. They wish they could do what guys like Markiplier and Curry Barker and Kane Parsons and Chris Stuckman are doing, and so if you are an aspiring filmmaker out there, a documentarian, YouTube is the place for you to put your practice into play and then just continue, acquiring skills, whether it's editing, whether it's shot composition, whether it's storytelling, whatever the case may be, you can do it on your own. You don't have to wait for permission anymore. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, click subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.